Hey guys, it's Max. I've been using the Focus since NAB about 2 months ago, where SmallHD gave me one of these to provide feedback to them and of course so I can make this review. Before I get into it, if you're a part of the notification squad, give me a comment down below, and if you're not, hit that gear icon or the bell to make sure you guys don't miss out on future videos. The SmallHD Focus was the biggest surprise for me at NAB because it addressed multiple pain points I have with these Sony cameras, and I've been waiting for a monitor like this now for over a year. Now I did have multiple concerns about it, and there is a feature that I really wish it did have, but I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Now let's start off with the biggest selling point, which is the 5-inch 800 nit display that can rotate. Most of the current Sony cameras have reflective displays that aren't very sharp, they don't rotate, and even worse, they dim when you start recording 4K. This makes them practically unusable outside, but the SmallHD Focus solves this with its bright screen. There are some other high brightness monitors out there, but they're very expensive, large and heavy, or often both. Personally, I've tried 3.5-inch displays which were too small, 7-inch which are too top heavy, so you probably guessed it, 5 inches is the perfect size. It's also under 4 ounces, so even with the bracket and a battery, it doesn't disrupt the balance of a tiny camera like the A6500. As you know, I shoot YouTube videos, so having a flip around screen is very helpful. With the Focus, I can flip the screen around when I'm recording myself, or if Vadim is shooting, he can flip the screen around and show me what the framing looks like, which is really nice. If you're a vlogger and you shoot with a Sony camera because of the nice image or the very good autofocus, the SmallHD Focus is going to make your life a lot easier. I hate messing with ball heads because it's a pain to get your monitor straight and then it gets loose and starts moving around or tilts forward, or if you have to take it off, you have to readjust everything. It's really a pain. So it's nice to have this bracket, and the way designed it, it's always straight, your monitor's straight, and it just works really well. There's just enough room to access all the buttons on top, even on a camera like this, where it's quite small. Of course, if you have on a bigger camera, typically the middle of the camera slightly raised higher, so you have even more room. So it's a perfect balance between having the monitor close to the camera and not being too top heavy, and still having all the access. And they also added a cold shoe mount here, so you can attach a wireless receiver or a shotgun mic or anything else, so you're not missing out on a cold shoe. We also have a few more /20 mounts at the top of the monitor and at the bottom if you want to mount something else. The display features a micro USB for camera control, which I haven't used, a micro HDMI input, an SD card slot for LUTs and firmware, a headphone jack, and a power output, which is a big selling point of the display. Most of these Sony cameras only get about 1 hour of battery life, so being able to power both your camera and the monitor from one battery, that not only extends your shooting time, but it also limits overheating because you're removing the hot battery from inside the camera and just using the one here. So if you have any issues with overheating when you're shooting for a long time, this is going to help that. I did a few battery tests using these cheap, slim batteries, which I'll link to in the video description, and I got about 1.5 hours of recording 4K with full autofocus and IBIS turned on, and having the monitor set to the maximum brightness, which I'm very happy with because these things are quite small and they add barely any weight to the camera. Now, if you buy the Focus kit, that's going to include a battery that's about twice as big, roughly, as this one here, and they say it gets about 2.5 hours of battery life. That's both powering your Sony camera and also the display at the same time. Now, of course, you can use some of these even bigger batteries, which I don't like to use because they are quite heavy, but this is going to get you at least 4 hours of continuous shooting, which is nice, but once again, you have to deal with the weight. A lot of filmmakers have a ton of these Sony batteries because they power lights and different accessories, so you probably already have a few, but I'll link to these big guys in the video description as well. The next great thing about this monitor is Swipe OS. Honestly, it's the best display menu system that I've used, and allows you to not only access everything you need quickly, but also have a ton of customizations for each tool and set up multiple workspaces with their own shortcuts. I can have one setup for shooting in the studio, another for working with log, and a third for run and gun shooting, and switch between them extremely quickly. You can have multiple zebras, one for properly exposing your skin tones in log, and another to see what's blown out or crushed. Even though this is SmallHD's least expensive monitor, they didn't cut out any of the software features to force you into a higher price model. Now, I can't go through all the menu subsettings or else we're going to be here for a very long time, but I'll go through the main options and tools. So we have input, backlighting, calibration settings, appearance if you need to adjust sharpness or some of the colors, headphone volume, image rotation, which I have auto image rotation on, so you can flip it around and it'll switch over. Pixel zoom, this is when you pull in with your finger or pinch to zoom in the level it goes in. Anamorphic D-squeeze if you need that, which is awesome. DSLR scaling, because some of the Canons, like you see here, they don't output a full image, it's smaller, so that way you can scale it up, which is nice. And image capture, which I have not used, but if you want to like grab a photo and it'll write to the card, you could do that. Remote, which I also haven't used. Status display, so I have it show frames a second, and it doesn't always overlay it, just if you pull down it'll show that. Date and time, which is totally wrong. Profiles, so I haven't used this because it's just me using this monitor, but you can actually load it to your SD card and save that. Here we have set up the top tools are tools that are specific to this space that I have set up. The ones at the bottom are universal throughout all your spaces. So for example, audio meters, you could set that as universal, so if you want to see them on no matter what space you're using. And if you have one selected, you pull over to the side and get all the different options. Now you see the options here. A lot of these tools have so much different options, so you can customize it as much as you want basically. So let's go back. I'm not going to go through all those because it'll take forever, but let's go through all the tools that we have. So tools for framing, for exposure, you have scopes, histogram, waveform, and vector scope, focus assistance, overlays, so you can put a LUT on there, you can actually capture an image, metering, stuff like that, and scaling if you want to do that. The only thing I don't like software-wise is the way the battery meter is shown. It's set up in volts, which makes it more difficult to understand how much life you have left in the battery, and you need to know what voltage the display and camera will die at instead of looking at a percentage. Hardware-wise, I really would have liked to have an auto brightness adjustment like you do on a phone. Most of the time it's not needed, but if you're doing run and gun shooting and changing lighting conditions, like at a wedding, it would have been nice not having to change your brightness manually. Let's get into my initial concerns, the first being 800 nits possibly not being bright enough. After shooting with it many times outside in harsh sunlight, 800 nits is definitely enough. Now I did have to max it out, but I never felt like I needed more brightness. The next thing is the screen not being sharp enough, which it definitely is. Since the display is 5 inches, the 720p resolution is actually a higher pixel densities than Apple's Retina standard. On top of that, it accepts a 1080p and soon a 4K signal, which is downsampled into the 720p display. This actually causes a little bit of aliasing on whatever is in focus, and that makes it extremely easy to set your focus. Even though focus peaking is included, I never had to use it because it's so easy to focus. My last concern was the headphone jack. Lots of monitors include this, which is nice because many cameras like the A6500 don't have one, but many models actually have a delay, which makes it hard to use. I was surprised that there's almost no delay with the SmallHD, and the output has a good volume and is clean, which makes it very nice to use. Before finishing off this review, I want to mention that the micro HDMI input has a slim port which prevents the jack from damage, which is nice, but limits the cables that can be used. Also, if you use a SmallHD with a Sony a6500, when you hit record, it stops displaying the video feed on the rear LCD, but it still shows all the data. Unfortunately, you can't get the video info to display on an external monitor, so you're kind of forced with looking at the monitor for your actual video and then glancing down to see all the video info, like your different settings, your record time, battery life, stuff like that. This isn't a problem with the monitor, but a limitation of the cheaper Sony cameras like the a6500. If you have a GH5 or an a7S II or another camera, this isn't going to be an issue. Along with that, if you want to use your a6500's autofocus and to be able to touch the autofocusing point that you want selected while you're recording, you're going to have to be able to do that blindly because obviously you don't have a video feed on the screen, but that's where your touchscreen is. So overall, this is by far my favorite monitor. I have multiple other monitors, but I don't use them often because either of the bulk or because they're not viewable outside. This thing is daylight viewable, small and lightweight, and has a lot of hardware and software features. Yes, it's not cheap, but it is the least expensive SmallHD and an excellent value. If you need a monitor and are considering this one, it's going to be a good investment and do the job. I'd even say if you're looking for a lower end budget monitor, something in the $200 to $300 price range, I would personally wait a little bit, save up some money and buy something like this, which is going to provide you a better value overall. I'm going to have a few links to this monitor in the video description. They have the base unit plus a few different bundles depending on which camera you want to get it for that include a battery and the dummy connection kit. Now, if you guys have any questions about it, make sure to ask in that comment section below. If you guys enjoyed the video or if it was helpful, please hit the like button. Once again, enable those notifications if you're already subscribed so you guys don't miss out on future videos. And if you're not yet subscribed, definitely hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. You guys can see another video right over here if you guys have some more time and want to check out some of my other content. This has been Max, and I will see you in the next video.